Hello students, welcome to my live teaching learning session of MMPC010 Managerial Economics. Today is the second session of this paper, Managerial Economics. In last session, we have discussed about what is managerial economics and what is the nature and scope of managerial economics. And managerial economics is a branch of microeconomics. You know that major economics branches are two. One is microeconomics and second is macroeconomics. Microeconomics deals with individual units of the economy like individual demand, individual supply, price of single commodity, and a firm or an industry, etc. Microeconomics studies about individual or a single person. And managerial economics deals with microeconomic theories, concepts. And macroeconomic is the branch of economics which deals with whole units of the economy, or in totality or in aggregates, like aggregate demand, aggregate supply, total saving, total investment, national income, theory of employment, population, poverty, balance of payment, foreign exchange rate, etc. Inflation or deflation, etc. So all these things are related with macroeconomics. But managerial economics is based on which branch of economics? Microeconomics. So you will study about the theories of microeconomics in this paper of managerial economics. In previous session, we have discussed scope of managerial economics, nature of managerial economics, meaning of managerial economics, and principles of managerial economics. Different principles like opportunity principle, discounted principle, incremental principle, we have discussed, and equi-marginal principle we have discussed in previous session. In today's session, we will discuss about Unit 4, Block 2, Theory of Demand. Theory of demand play a very important role because demand is the main thing on which business entrepreneurs or business activities based on. Because business entrepreneurs' main aim is to earn maximum profit at minimum cost. They produce goods and services for the satisfaction of consumer wants. Firstly, consumer demand for goods and services. After that, producer produce goods according to their taste, according to their demand, according to their preferences of the country people, and then they can get maximum profit. So theory of demand play a very important role in managerial economics. To know about the demand of the country people, demand of the individual person, demand of the whole people demand is very necessary to understand for demand forecasting. So theory of demand, in this concept, we will discuss about meaning of demand, means what is the meaning of demand, or in simple words, what we understand about this concept of demand. And next is what is law of demand, who propounded this law of demand, and what is the determinant factors of demand, or what are the factors affecting of demand. Why demand curve slopes downward? What are the exceptional cases of demand? And in this session, we will cover change in demand and change in quantity demanded, and why demand analysis is important in this managerial economics. So all the topics which is related with theory of demand, we will cover in today's session. So let us start from the first topic, demand theory. What is the meaning of this demand theory? Demand theory is a principle relating to the relationship between consumer demand for goods and services and their prices. Demand theory forms the basis for the demand curve, which relates consumer desire to the amount of goods available. As more of a good or service is available, demand drops, and so does the equilibrium price. If supply is more and demand is less, then there will be a disequilibrium in price level. If demand is more, supply is less, then there will also occur the situation of disequilibrium. But if demand and supply both are equal, both are in a same position, if demand curve intersects supply curve, the nature of demand curve is always downward and the nature of supply curve is always upward. Demand concept is related with consumer. Supply concept is related with producer. Demand for goods and services mainly occur, or it is originated by the desire or by the want of the people. You know that we must have to do demand for goods and services. For what purpose? For satisfying our wants. So demand theory is a principle which is related to the consumer satisfaction, or it shows the relationship between consumer demand for goods and services and their price level. And there is a negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. Whenever price rises, demand falls. Price falls, demand rises. If there is a negative relationship between price and quantity demanded, then demand curve will be downward sloping curve. So this is the brief concept of demand theory or explanation of this demand theory. Now next is, this demand theory was first introduced by Leon Walras in 1834 to 1910. A French economist gave demand theory as a fundamental principle of microeconomics, which gives the analysis of the relationship between the demand for goods and services and the prices or income of the consumer. After that, this theory was subsequently developed by English economist Alfred Marshall. The time period of Alfred Marshall is 1842 to 1924. Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto, 1848 to 1923. Soviet Eugen Slutsky, 1880 to 1948. American economist Kenneth Arrow, 1921, and the French-born Gerard Devereux, 1921. So Firstly, the theory of demand was introduced by Leon Walras, French economist, introduced this demand theory, which is the main fundamental principle of microeconomics. And it gives the main analysis of the relationship between price of the commodity and the demand for a commodity. After that, this demand theory was popularized or developed by Alfred Marshall. And a great contribution in this theory of demand given by Alfred Marshall. This is a simple history of this demand theory, or who propounded this theory. Now next is theory of demand. Now this law of demand or theory of demand mainly states the functional relationship between price and quantity demanded. There is a negative or inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. You know that consumer, we all are consumer because we purchase goods and services at a particular price which is prevailing in the market. And how price is determined? Price is determined with the forces of market demand and market supply curve. They both curve intersect each other. Price is determined. And as a consumer, being a consumer, we always demand more goods when price is less, and demand for less goods when price is more. For example, at present, the price of tomato is increasing. So demand will decrease. At higher price, demand remains always low, and at lower price, demand remains always higher. Because consumer main desire is to gain maximum satisfaction through minimum spending. That's why this theory of demand states the functional relationship between price and quantity demanded. In this theory of demand, we will study about the nature of demand curve, why demand curve slopes always downward, why this curve slopes always downward, what is the reason behind that? The reason is income effect and substitution effect. If our income increases, then we can purchase more goods. If our income is falling, then our demand will also fall. So demand depends upon income of the consumer, and you know that if income remains constant, or if money income is same, salary is same, but price is increasing, then our purchasing power will fall. And due to fall in purchasing power, demand for that commodity will also fall. So at higher price, our purchasing power will be lower, and demand for the commodity will also be lower. There is an inverse relationship between price and demand. That's why demand curve slopes downward, and it lies in this income effect. Next is substitution effect. You know, if in a market substitute goods are available, for example, car, and there are so many alternatives or so many substitutes of cars. There are different models of cars at present available in the economy. For example, tea and coffee. If price of tea rises, then people will demand more for coffee And if price of tea falls, then demand for coffee will also fall. This is called substitution effect. It means if goods are substitutable, if we can use one commodity for another, and if price of one commodity increases, then people will demand more for other substitutable goods. In this case, there is the inverse relationship between price of one commodity and the demand for their substitutable commodity. So demand curve slopes downward, due to which effect? Substitution effect. And we will study about exceptional cases why demand curve slopes upward. Generally, it slopes downward according to the law of demand. But sometimes its slopes may be upward. Upward means increasingly when there is a positive or direct relationship between price and quantity demanded, then demand curve slopes will be upward from left to right. And same as supply curve. There are some exceptional cases in which demand will increase at higher price and demand will decrease at lower price. But generally, always exists the indirect or negative relationship between demand and price. But sometimes or occasionally or in case of emergency, there are some exceptional cases. When price rises, demand rises, price falls, demand falls. These are known as exceptional cases of demand. And we will discuss all these things in detail in today's session. This is the brief description of this theory of demand, in which you will study about law of demand, why demand curve slopes downward, and what are the exceptions or limitations of this theory of demand. Now next is demand. Firstly, you must have to understand the meaning of demand, or what is the concept of demand, or demand refers to what. Demand is the basis of all productive activities. Demand theory is an economic theory that concerns the relationship between the demand for goods and their prices. It forms the core of microeconomics and also in managerial economics, because in managerial economics, a manager or business entrepreneur must have to know about the demand of the people. Because according to the demand of the people, producer will produce goods and services. If producer is producing according to the demand of the people, then their product will easily sold in the market or sell in the market, and producer can get maximum profit. So if producer will study about cost of production, production function, market structure, all these concepts are related with which branch of economics? Microeconomics. That's why managerial economics deals with which theory? Microeconomic theory and its principles and its main instruments. So in managerial economics, demand concept is very important because demand is the main base of all productive activities, and demand theory is an economic theory that concerns the relationship between price of the commodity and demand for the goods and services, and it is the main core of microeconomics. The generation of demand can be shown pictorially as given below. First of all, need. First of all, which thing is occur? Need. Need arise. Need arises want, and want will create demand. If we need any particular commodity, then we will keep desire for that commodity. We want to buy that commodity. And if we want to buy that commodity, then demand will occur. Demand will be present in the economy. And then producer will take steps on the particular demand for that commodity. Producer will produce goods and services according to the demand generated by country people. So demand refers to the quantity of a commodity which consumer is willing to buy at a given price and at a given time period. Demand concept is a flow concept because demand is related with period of time. Means demand can be occurred according to the daily basis or weekly basis, monthly basis, yearly basis or hourly basis. So when a concept is related with per day, per month, per week, per hour, per year, that is known as flow concept. So demand refers to the quantity of a commodity which consumer is willing to buy at a given price and at a given time period is known as demand. In beginning, demand has four concepts. First of all, if you want to create a demand, then first of all, what things which are necessary to begin this concept of demand? Number one is you must have a desire for that commodity. If you have a desire for that commodity, then demand will occur. If you don't have a desire for any commodity, then demand will not occur. Demand will not generate. So desire is the main thing for the occurrence of this concept demand. Second thing is the commodity should also available in a market. If you want to buy any commodity, then second thing is that commodity should also available in the market which you want to buy. Then demand can be fulfilled. Not only desire can fulfill the concept of demand. Not only need or want can fulfill the concept of demand. Mainly four things are necessary to fulfill this concept of demand. In which number one is desire for that commodity. You must have a desire for that commodity which you want to buy. After that, second is that commodity should also available in the market. If commodity is not available in the market, then how you can buy that commodity? How you can satisfy your demand? Not possible. So desire will not be called demand. Second thing is commodity should be available in the market. Number three is you must have purchasing power. If you don't have purchasing power, then how you can fulfill the concept of demand? How you can buy that commodity from the market? Because at present nothing is available at free of cost. You must have to pay for anything. If you want to buy any commodity, then you must have to pay some amount of money for purchasing that commodity. So in this case, purchasing power should also be exist. And fourth is willingness to pay. Sometimes what will happen? Sometimes people have desire. Commodity is also available in the market. People have money in their pockets, but they are not willing to pay. They are not interested to pay. They are not ready to pay the price for that commodity, then what will happen? Demand concept will not be fulfilled. So these are four main things which can fulfill this concept of demand. One is desire. You must have a desire, strong desire. You must have a strong desire for that commodity. Second thing is commodity should be available in the market. Number three is you must have purchasing power to purchase that commodity. And fourth is willingness to pay. You are ready to pay. If you are ready to pay for that commodity, then you can buy that commodity and bring that commodity at home. That is called demand. But if you are only thinking about that commodity, not actually you are buying that commodity, is not considered as demand. So generally people say that demand means what we demand for anything. But this is not the accurate concept of demand. In economics, demand concept refers to the quantity of a commodity which a consumer is willing to buy at a given price and at a given time period is known as demand. Or demand concept can be fully complete when four things are available. Strong desire for a commodity, availability of that commodity in a market. Third is willingness. Third is you must have purchasing power to buy that commodity. And fourth is willingness to pay or ready to pay. Then demand will be fulfilled. So this is the main meaning of this concept of demand. Now next is, so concept of effective demand is desire to buy. You must have a desire to buy, a strong desire to buy any commodity. You must have willingness to pay for that commodity, or you must have purchasing power for that commodity or ability to pay. Then you must have strong desire. Then it will create a want, and then it will fulfill the concept of demand. So this is the main concept of effective demand. Now next is demand curve. What is demand curve? Demand curve is graphical presentation of demand schedule. In simple words, we can say that demand curve is a graphical presentation of demand schedule. Demand curve slopes always downward, demonstrating that consumers are willing to buy more goods at lower price and less goods at higher price. So consumers are willing to buy more at a lower price as the product becomes relatively cheaper and the consumer's real income increases. If there is an inverse relationship between quantity and price, then demand curves generally slopes downward. They intersect the quantity y-axis, a result of time-limited income and wealth. On x-axis, we will write quantity, and on y-axis, we will take price. And as well as price rises, demand falls, and price falls, demand rises. There is an inverse relationship between price and demand. That's why demand curve slopes downward. So they intersect the quantity x-axis as a result of time limitations and diminishing marginal utility. And what is diminishing marginal utility? Marginal utility is the want satisfying power. Utility is a concept which explains the want satisfaction power. And marginal utility always diminishes as well as we consume more and more goods of a commodity, then our satisfaction which we derive from the consumption of that commodity start falling. That's why marginal utility always diminishes as well as the number of units increases. So there is an inverse relationship between number of units and marginal utility. This is known as diminishing marginal utility. And the utility curve, marginal utility curve is also downward sloping because it is based on the assumption of law of demand. Now next is the concept of market. What is the meaning of this concept of market? In this concept of market, you know that market is a place where buyers and sellers always stand together. Sellers sell their goods and buyers purchase that commodity. And what price fixed? The price is fixed with the help of demand and supply curves, where both are agreed, where both means buyers and sellers, if both are agreed to take a particular price for that commodity, that price is called equilibrium price. And who are buyers? Consumers and firms are buyers. And who are sellers? Sellers are producers of goods and services are called sellers. And what is market? Market is a place, market is an institution, market is a mechanism brings together buyers and sellers. And market may be perfect competition, market may be monopoly, market may be monopolistic competition, market may be oligopoly. There are no limited geographical boundaries exist in many forms. And where buyers and sellers interact to each other, market price of a good or collection of goods will determine. So this is the main concept of market, in which buyers and sellers are included. And individual economic unit can be divided into two main parts. One is buyer and other is seller. And market is a place. Market is an institution or mechanism that brings together the buyers and sellers. Now next is demand and supply. Demand and supply play a very important role in microeconomics. Supply, as you know that it is related with seller or producers. Supply concerned to suppliers or producers, and demand is the concept which is related with consumers or buyers. And at present, economy is dynamic. Sometimes demand may be equals to supply and may not be. Because economy is dynamic and it's not necessarily the equilibrium position in between of demand and supply. Maybe disequilibrium situation can arise. Maybe sometimes demand is more but supply is less. Sometimes supply is more but demand is less. And these are the main two tools. If you understand the concept of supply and demand, you can know about whole economics, because whole economy is based on supply and demand. And the price of any commodity is based on the law of demand and supply. And you know that 4 sectors at present in an economy exist. One is household sector, in which we all lie in household sector. We all are concerned with household sector because we are the owner of all factors of production. We offer factors of production to the firms so that firm can produce goods and services for us. And government at present play very important role to manage and to control the whole economic activities and to maintain stability in price level To maintain stability in an economy, government play important role. Household always provides four factors of production like land, labor, capital, entrepreneur to the farm sector or business sector, and business sector provides goods and services to the household sector. Government collect taxes through household sector and through business sector, and government gives subsidies or transfer payment or one-sided payment to the household sector, and government give subsidies to the farm sector. So this is a flow through which whole economic activities run smoothly. And supply and demand is very important concept to understand this managerial economics. Here in this diagram, in this figure, you know that here supply is less but demand is more. So it will known as the situation of equilibrium or disequilibrium. What type of situation at present here is showing? This situation is showing that disequilibrium present here. Here demand is more and supply is less. Then what will happen? Price will rise. If demand is more, supply is less. For example, tomato price is increasing because demand is more, but the supply is less. When supply will be more, demand will be less, price will fall. But if demand is more, supply is less, then price will rise. Main funda is demand and supply. Who can control the price of the commodity or determine the equilibrium price of the commodity, and sometimes disequilibrium situation also exists due to increase in demand then supply, and due to increase in supply then demand. So this is the main two concepts, supply and demand. Now next is consumers demand theory. Consumer mainly demand for goods, and goods may be inferior goods, goods may be substitutable goods, goods may be normal goods. There are different types of goods. One is inferior goods, next is normal goods, and next is substitutes goods. Inferior goods are those goods whose demand inversely related with the income level of the consumer. A good that decreases in demand when consumers' income rise, and the demand increases when consumers' income falls. So if goods are inferior or lower quality product, as well as consumer income rises, demand for inferior goods falls. There is a negative relationship between price, income of the consumer and demand for inferior goods. Now next is normal goods. Normal goods are those goods which demand increases when income increases and demand falls when income falls. But price remains constant. Price will not change. But inferior goods show negative or inverse relationship between income and demand for a inferior good. Inferior goods are lower qualitative products, and normal goods are normal products whose demand increases at higher income, demand rise, at lower income, demand falls. There is a direct and positive relationship between income and demand. Now next is substitutes goods. Substitute goods are those goods which can use in place of each other. For example, tea or coffee. If price of one commodity rises, then demand for its substitute goods will rise. So, a product or service that satisfies the need of a consumer that another product or service fulfills. So, here consumer demand theory is related with demand for different types of goods like inferior goods, normal goods, and substitutable goods. The example of substitute goods are tea or coffee. Normal goods like wheat, rice, bread, sugar, etc. All these are normal goods. And inferior goods are those goods which are lower in quality like raw jute. And if people are taking toned milk, if their income is less and they are not interested to pay, they are not able to pay higher price, then they will buy lower quality product and double toned or toned milk. But at present, it's not called inferior good because at present, people sometimes, those who are belong to the higher income category, they also prefer to buy toned or double toned milk due to some health issues. So inferior goods are generally those type of goods like maize and raw jute, etc. And normal goods are those goods which are known as normal products whose demand increases as income increases and demand falls as income falls. Positive relationship between income and demand. And substitute goods are those goods whose demand is related with the price of substitutable product. And if two products are interrelated with each other, and if price of one commodity increases, then demand for other commodity will also increase. That is called substitutes goods. For example, tea or coffee. Now next is law of demand. Law of demand explain the negative relationship between price and quantity demanded if other things remaining constant. Here two scenarios are given. At higher prices, there is a lower demand for a commodity, and at lower prices, there is a high quantities demanded. So law of demand represent an inverse relationship or negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. And what is quantity demanded? Quantity demanded is the amount of goods and services that consumers are willing to buy or able to buy at a given price and at a given time period. And this law of demand states the inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. That's why demand curve slopes downward and supply curve always slopes upward. Where both curve intersect each other, equilibrium price is determined and equilibrium quantity is also determined. So this is law of demand, which shows inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded if other things remaining constant. And what are these other things? Other things means law of demand is based on some assumptions. Now, what are the assumptions of law of demand? There are so many assumptions of law of demand. This law of demand is applicable when these assumptions will be fulfilled, like there is no change in income of the consumer, there is no change in price of the product or related commodities product, there is no change in quality of the product, there is no substitutable commodities, price will change in the market, the prices of related goods should also remain constant or same. There is no change in taste and preferences of the consumer. There is no change in customs of the people. There is no change in size of population in a country. There is no change in weather and climate conditions of the country. And the tax rate or fiscal policy or fiscal measures if there is no change in fiscal measures and tax rate, then this law of demand will applicable. So these are assumptions of law of demand. If other things remaining constant or ceteris paribus, then this law of demand states the inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. At higher price, demand will be lower, and at lower price, demand will be higher. That is called law of demand, which is propounded or developed by Alfred Marshall. Next is demand schedule. Now, what is demand schedule? Schedule means table. Demand schedule is a tabular presentation of different quantities of a commodity at given prices. It shows the price and demand or output relationship. It's a tabular presentation of price and demand. Here in this schedule, here prices are given like 4, 3, 2, 1. Here what type of prices are given? Falling price. Price is falling. Then what will happen? Demand will rise. At lower price, you know that demand will higher, and at higher price, demand will be lower. So if price is falling like 4, 3, 2 and 1, then demand will rise. Quantity demanded is 10, 20, 30, 40. At lower price, demand will be higher, and at higher price, demand will be lower. If we are showing this inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded with the help of a table, that is called demand schedule. So demand schedule is a tabular presentation of different quantities of a commodity at given prices. Now next is, this is demand curve with slope always downward from left to right. It shows inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. When price rises, demand falls. When price falls, demand rises. Its slope is always downward or negative. Now next is individual demand and market demand. There are two types of demand. We can categorize or we can divide demand into two categories. One is individual demand and other is market demand. Individual demand refers to the demand from the individual, family or household. It's a single consuming entity's demand. And the market demand is the sum of individual demand. It refers to the total demand of all buyers taken together. It is the aggregate of the quantities of a product demanded by all the individuals, buyers at a given price over a given period of time. It is the sum total of individual demand function. Market demand is more important from the business point of view. Sales depends on market demand. So does planning future marketing strategy. Prices are determined on the basis of demand for the product. The following table shows that individual demand for eggs and how the market demand eggs at various prices is derived from it. For example, you know that individual demand shows, if we are talking about individual demand schedule. Individual demand schedule is a tabular presentation of different quantity of a commodity by a single person or individual person at given prices. And market demand schedule is the total of or sum total of individual demand schedule. And quantity demanded explain that fluctuation in prices, if other things remaining constant, then demand curve can move upward or downward. So fluctuation in prices, another determinants of demand, causes movement along the demand curve. If other things remaining constant, only price fluctuate, then it will move the demand curve to upward or left downward. Next is market demand curve is the sum total of individual demand curves. If we are showing a single consumer demand, that will be called individual demand curve, like individual one's demand curve. Next is individual person 2 or number second demand curve. And if we add individual 1 plus individual 2, both demand curve, then we can get market demand curve. So market demand curve is the horizontal summation of demand curve or horizontal summation of individual demand curves is known as market demand curve. Next is, what are the determinants of demand? What factors affect demand? You know that demand mainly depends upon the price of the commodity. When price rises, demand falls, and price falls, demand rises. Demand also affected by some other factors. For example, price of related goods. In related goods, we include two types of goods. One is substitutable and other is complementary. Substitute goods are those goods which can use in place of each other, and complementary goods are those goods which are always used together. The example of substitute goods are like tea or coffee, and the complementary goods examples are like car and petrol, ink and pen, and needle and thread, which are always used together. We can't use separately complementary goods. So price of related goods also affect the demand of a commodity. Third is size of household income. Our income also affects the demand for a commodity. If our income is less, then we will demand more for inferior goods. If our income is higher, then we will demand more for normal goods. And if our income can't influence the demand for a commodity, it means that type of commodity is necessary commodity, like salt, wheat, rice, sugar. All these things are necessary products. Whatever amount of income we have, the demand will not change. If demand will not change due to change in income level, that is called necessary goods demand. Next is taste and fashion. You know that taste and fashion also affects the demand for a commodity. If we are giving more preference or we have a great taste for any particular commodity, then definitely we will buy that commodity. And you know that at present, the thing which is in fashion, which is in trend, people are always willing to buy that product. So their demand depends upon taste and preferences. And demand depends upon expectations, what we expect. If we expect that price will increase in future, then present time period demand will rise. And if we expect that future price will fall, then present demand will fall and future demand will rise. Whenever we expect that price will fall, our demand will rise in that time period, either in present or in future. If price will fall in future, then demand will increase in future and fall in present. And if price will rise in future, then demand will rise in present and fall in future. This is expectations. Next is distribution of income among household. If income distribution is equal among the country people, then all country people will be in same category and their purchasing power will rise and their demand will also rise. But if income distribution is unequal, then society will divide it into two categories. One will be a rich category and other will be a poor category. Some people will fall in rich category and most of the country people will fall in poor category. In this case, rich people, if we assume that 20% are rich people and 80% are poor people, in totality or in aggregate, the total demand for a commodity will fall. So distribution of income also affects the demand for a commodity. If distribution of income is equal, then demand will rise. And if distribution of income is unequal, then demand will fall. And number of buyers also affect. If population is increasing, demand will rise. If population is decreasing, demand will fall. So number of buyers also affects the demand for a commodity. These are determinants or factors affecting of demand. Now factors affecting demand, as we explained that income of the consumer, as income rises, demand rises. If income distribution is equal, demand will rise. Income distribution is unequal, demand will fall. Utility of demand. Utility means the want satisfying power of human wants at a given period of time. The quantity demanded of a commodity depends upon its utility. The commodities who have greater utility will be demanded more. If anything, which have very higher utility power, then people will demand more for that commodity. And if anything, which have less utility, then demand will also be less. Price of the good, you know that there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. And price of related goods in which substitute and complementary goods are included. If price of tea rises, then demand for coffee will rise. And if price of car rises, in case of complementary goods, then demand for petrol will fall. Because if price of car rises, then people will not buy car, then why they will buy petrol? So in case of complementary goods, if price of one product rises, then demand for its complementary goods fall. But in case of substitute goods, if price of tea rises, then people will prefer to buy its substitute goods like coffee. So complementary goods are always jointly demanded, and substitute goods can be used in place of each other. Next is factors affecting like substitute goods in case of substitute or complementary goods. In case of complementary goods, demand curve will be downward sloping, and in case of substitute goods, demand curve will be upward sloping. Because on x-axis, if we are taking demand for tea, and on y-axis we are taking price of coffee. As price of coffee rises, demand for tea will rise. Price of coffee falls, demand for tea will fall. There is a positive or direct relationship. That's why demand curve slopes upward. And in case of complementary goods, if price of car rises, then or if price of sugar rises, then demand for tea will fall. In this case, there is an inverse relationship and curve will be downward sloping. Next is why demand analysis is important. You know, demand analysis is very important. Demand is the mother of production. Business managers always want to know what are the sources of demand, what are the determinants of demand, how do buyers decide the quantity of a product to be purchased, how do buyers respond to price changes, what is consumer behavior. To analyze all these things, we must have to understand the concept of demand. Because without understanding the demand analysis, a business entrepreneur or any manager or in managerial economics, we can't achieve our set targets, we can't achieve set goals. And if we are not analyze this demand and we have no no knowledge of forecasting the demand, then how we can produce goods and services for consumers? If we produce more goods but demand is less, then we will bear losses. And if we produce less goods and demand is more, then again we will bear losses. So how we can manage the equilibrium in between of demand and supply? This is very necessary. So this concept, demand analysis, is very important to understand all these things. So demand is the mother of production, and business managers always want to know what are the sources of demand and what are the main determinants of demand and what is the behavior of the consumer. And you know that in determination of price, demand and supply both are very important. Supply curve is always upward sloping curve and demand is also always downward sloping curve, where both curve intersect each other. equilibrium price is determined. And if supply is constant, demand is downward, then again we can determine the equilibrium price. Because these are main two tools through which we can determine the equilibrium price. So here there are two sets of supply and demand. Someone said that demand and supply are very important concept to understand, and to understand these concepts you can become an economist. If you want to become an economist, then you must have to know about the concept of demand and supply. So in today's session, we have discussed about theory of demand, its determinants, law of demand, and market or individual demand, and why we want to study this demand analysis, and why it is helpful in managerial economics. The remaining topics of this unit we will discuss in next session. Thank you.